All right, so now we're going to look at 14104, rating of overcurrent devices. So you guys stringing rules together, 14104, table 13. How would you apply that to 8-104 and with 4-004, the selection of conductors, etc.? So let's take a look here. Subrule 1, very restrictive. If you had to apply with subrule 1 every time, it'd be pretty tough. It says, the rating or setting of overcurrent devices shall not exceed the allowable ampacity of the conductors they protect, except. Well, we already know, we looked at 14100 tap conductors. Okay, there was an exception. And in this rule, we have other exceptions. It says, A, where a fuse or a circuit breaker having a rating or setting of the same value as the ampacity of conductor is not available, and the maximum calculated or known load isn't in accordance with the rules of Section 8, the ratings or settings given in Table 13 shall be permitted to be used within the maximum value of 800 amps. All right, so it's specific here to Section 8. You have to be in Section 8 to apply Table 13. Let's go take a look at it. All right, Table 13, rating or setting of overcurrent devices protecting conductors. It's got an asterisk here. All right. Here we have so in this column here, we have on the right column here, we have the rating or setting of the overcurrent device. So whether it's a fuse or a circuit breaker, these are the common numbers. 15 amps, it starts at 15 and goes all the way down to 110 in the first column. And then on the farthest column, it starts at 125 and goes all the way down to 800 amps. So that is the overcurrent devices. And then they have this ampacity of conductors next to it. So how this table works is this way. If you look at it, if I had a Section 8, all right, so I'm going to use this as an example. I was going to use a single family dwelling, but we have Table 39 to use for our overcurrent device. So let's just take a calculation on a load where my calculated value was 200 amps and it was a continuous load and it was out of Section 8. And I'm going to apply 14104 in Table 13, and I must comply with 8-104. It's a continuous load and it's an 80% rated breaker. And I'm going to use a 3-conductor cable. And we'll throw in the termination temperature rule as well. So so we're stringing rules here together, guys. We'll throw 4-006 here. All these things. You've got to be able to do this stuff as a journeyman. Not so much as your first year guys, forget it. If you could understand basically a rule and start the understanding, but years 3 and 4, you absolutely have to understand this stuff to be a journeyman. Okay, so 200 amp continuous load, 80% rated breaker. I can only load the breaker and the conductor to 80%. So there's 2 ways to do it. You can go select your overcurrent device and multiply it by 0.8 to get the value, or we can just take 200 amps and multiply it by 1.25, and that is going to take us to the minimum breaker size and wire size. That takes me to the minimum fuse and conductor ampacity. So I come to table 13, I look here, I have a 250 amp fuse. Now, this is the part you got to get down. The way the table works is when you do this calculation, that is the minimum rating of the fuse and the overcurrent device. When you see this little window next to the fuse in the table here, it doesn't allow you to go and select a 226 amp conductor. You must comply with this. You can, according to 8-104, okay, 80% rated out of table 2, we can only load the breaker and the cable to 80%. That becomes the minimum ampacity of the fuse and the conductor. Don't be confused by this number that's in the table. All right? If this number happened to come out to say, let's change this number, imagine it wasn't 200 amps, maybe it was one. Instead of the continuous load being 200 amps, imagine if it was 135 amps. I'll multiply it by 1.25. That comes out to 168.5 amps. So that's the minimum ampacity of the wire and the fuse. Now, that just so happened it fell right onto the ampacity of a fuse. You could go to table 13 and select it. But here, there is no 160 amp fuse, or 168. We must go to the next available one, which, if we look in the table, is 175. And when we look there in the little window, $175 amp fuse, and it has the ampacity of the conductor is 151 to 175. That right there is the minimum ampacity of the breaker and the wire. We move up to the 175 amp fuse. That becomes the minimum ampacity of the wire, not 151 points, not 151, all right? That's how the table works, all right? So keep it basic. Continuous loading, table 13 allows you to select that, all right? Thanks.